So good evening, and thank you all for coming out. I know not only from Patricia, but from other reports, the traffic's a little bit wonky tonight, and especially on what's been an emotional day in the wake of everything that happened in Las Vegas. Pleased to see people come out here and participate. You may be aware, you may not be aware, that the City of Charleston, through the Moja Arts Festival, in partnership with the Avery Center and the Charleston County Public Library, is having a NEA Big Read. It's the first time in 10 years that we've pursued this project. The last time it was Their Eyes Were Watching God. This year, because of some enlightened thinking at the endowment and their partners, we're able to pursue a contemporary volume. And when we saw the chance to have Citizen and American Lyric be brought forward to Charleston as a book that everyone should be encouraged to engage with and take a deeper dive, we leapt at the chance and had great partners willing to come along with us. So tonight is what we're calling our Keynote panel, and we're delighted to have such a great representation of artists here to join us, and a talented moderator who I'll introduce in 1 minute. And then we also have another special event in 2 weeks' time that I'll close out our discussion talking about and introducing that. But in the meantime, if you go to charlestonarts.org, you can find out about reading groups and other events, some that are kind of spontaneously generated. We talked about how it would be wonderful to have this as a campus-wide read project at the college. We had a cold call from the Citadel saying how could their cadets read this book. So we're pleased to say that we'll be everywhere from the Citadel to 180 Place to the far reaches. I don't know if we're out to Hollywood and Ravenel, but we'll at least be in Mount Pleasant talking about Citizen. And it really is an amazing opportunity that the endowment's given us, because while books may seem like increasingly a thing that people don't really engage with, it's all the more rare for us to have access to working capital to help people find out the power of words, to find out the power of ideas, and to read. So even just as an effort to share out during the Moja Arts Festival, during Charleston's inaugural Poetry Festival, Free Verse, to be able to say with a little bit of muscle, here are extra books. If you go to a little free library over the month of October, guess what you'll find? If you come to Charleston Recreation Center or the mayor's office and you're waiting for your meeting, you will see the book. And we're just trying to say even a gentle nudge is important. All the more important is for you to tell your friends, your neighbors, share the word. We really kind of came at this from an informed perspective. 2 years ago during Piccolo Spoleto, when I think we were a little queasy in the wake of the shooting in North Charleston with Walter Scott, that Pure Theater, our local producing theater company, had a very ambitious project to present Citizen and American Lyric. And it was a project that had first been done in Los Angeles and was a big leap for the company. But with a talented core ensemble, they were able to bring it to life. And kind of in retrospect now, the poignancy and power of that effort, we now have a new reading here in 2017. And obviously, our perception in Charleston is layered and complicated. Gun violence may not be the totality of it, but it's in no small measure. If you just look at the work that's on view here for our juried art show, it is present in everyone's memory. And so in the wake of a horrific massacre in another community, I think that it's all the more important that we commit ourselves to dialogue, to discussion. I still remember the town hall meeting that was held at Circular Congregational with Gwen Eiffel facilitating, and I think her closing words were, let's keep the conversation going, let's keep the discussion happening. So thank you for being part of this, and I will leave it to Dr. Patricia Williams Lessane from the Avery to introduce our panel. What I can say is that they all have different kind of threads back to Moja, the Free Verse Poetry Festival, Citizen and American Lyric and Pure, but these are some of the people that we greatly admire, and having the opportunity to have them share their perspective on identity and how that inflects their performance practice and their pursuit of an artistic life. I think we just wanted to be able to share with you an opportunity for candid conversation and exchange of ideas, and then we'll open up the floor to Q&A from you all. And then, as I said, we'll have a few closing words at the end to talk about what's next with the big read.
All right, well, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Scott, for having me. As the executive director at Avery, I'm always honored when we can come out to the community. We like to see y'all at Avery, but we also like to come out and be a part of what's going on in the city. And of course, Avery has been a part of Moja for a very, very long time, predating my arrival at the College of Charleston, for sure. Having said that, I am actually going to let the panelists introduce themselves, and then I'm going to open up with a couple of questions to sort of, get our juices flowing, and then hopefully we'll have an organic conversation, and we want you to jump in. But I do want to ask, how many of y'all have actually finished, I'm going to say finished reading Citizen? Because when you say how many of y'all have read it, then like my students, nobody raises their, how many of you have finished reading it? Okay, all right, that's cool. You won't get any demerits tonight for that. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys, and if you could just tell everyone your name and what you do and how you came to this, or how you come to this book.
So my name is Ronald Brown. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I have a dance company called Evidence. We rehearsed where I was born in the section of Brooklyn. I'm here doing some site visits with my dance company. Never had it 32 years. And so I haven't read it yet.
I'm Joy Vandervort-Cobb, and I was introduced to Citizen after the Mother Emanuel massacre, and then was part of the Pure ensemble who performed it here in Charleston.
And it was wonderful.
Yes.
It was awesome.
My name is Benjamin Starr. My stage name is Benjamin Starr. I'm a hip-hop artist. I'm from a small town in Berkeley County. I'm from South Carolina, and I just moved back to Charleston on September 1st, and I was introduced to this book through a female friend of mine who lives in Atlanta, and I used to see it sticking out of her purse all the time. I remember distinctly the cover. It was really a distinct cover, and this was maybe 2015, and eventually she gave me that book and she urged me to read it. So
my name is Manny Houston. People call me Manny. Manny Houston. I am a musician here in Charleston, classical pianist from the College of Charleston, but I run a wedding band company, musically direct for theaters around town, etc. I was privy to this book because of this woman right here. She was also just somebody influential in my life at the College of Charleston. So she told me that they were doing a show and I needed to come see it. So 2015, I didn't realize that was 2 years ago. I was talking to my girlfriend a second ago. I didn't realize that was 2 years ago that show was performed. It seems like it was yesterday, but yeah, we saw the show then, and it was very, very heavy. And it weighed on my memory for a while.
Alrighty, so when I think about this book, I think about Ntozake Shange's For Colored Girls, not because it deals with Black women's issues solely, but because Ntozake Shange's seminal work was a choreo poem. Many of you will know that, and that she actually started performing it in cabarets and nightclubs in the 70s after writing the poem. And so we know that Claudine writes this lyrical opera, and then Joy and her ensemble then translate, or it's translated into a stage performance. So I guess my question is to Joy and to the hip hop artists, why do you see poetry as a as a literary tool for addressing social justice issues, for self-reflection around issues around race. I mean, growing up, when I thought of, when I was taught poetry, it was, Browning and, all these Whitman and Frost. But Black writers have used the poem as a way to interrogate not just what was happening to themselves, but what was going on in the country. So can you speak a little bit about that in terms of how she uses poetry and then theater to discuss our times or to interrogate our times?
Well, her poetry, this particular one, Citizen is the American lyric, is written very prosaically, for those of you who've read it. It's written in a form that speaks aloud without the rhyme, so there's no distance between those words and her reading audience. And so it's spoken very easily aloud. And because it connects so easily, so quickly to the ear and the inner, it just lent itself to a certain kind of theatricality, I think. And because it's so moving and so timely, the language was so alive, the message resounded so well with everybody I know who's read it, that I think that the move to theater made complete sense. Hip hop?
I agree with what she said. I was born in 1987. I grew up as a kid in the early 90s, so my introduction to poetry and that form of expression really was hip-hop. It was Tupac Shakur, it was Scarface and Outkast and Nas and Common and all of these artists. It wasn't just about jazzy or soulful production that they were rhyming over, or the cadences, or the flows that they would exhibit over this musical production. It was also, they were teaching me things. I remember when Tupac said, I remember Marvin Gaye used to sing to me, "Got me feeling like black was the thing to be," and I was 5 or 6 years old, and it made me want to ask my mom, okay, who is Marvin Gaye? And then I put it together, this guy whose music I was hearing in the house. Tupac made it cool for me. Common made me understand Assata Shakur's story before I was privy to reading Assata Shakur's autobiography. I mean, I learned about counterintelligence program and J. Edgar Hoover and all of these things that were going on in our community. That was my introduction to hip hop, and it's something about that form of expression is uniquely Black to me, because so much of our experiences, and my experiences personally, I have to guard how I express those things in the world. And just like she said, it's so real and it cuts so deep and so beautifully written that it just moves you in a way where it's very moving, and it's hip hop to me. That to me embodies like my generation. I'm a hip hop kid, so reading her writing, it made me feel a certain way, like it's connecting one generation with another generation to really speak truth about the Black experience.
As Kara S1 said, what is it? Open your mind and stick a book in it. Is that what
Play that down.
I was reaching back for it. So, okay, so Ron and Manny, I want to ask you, I want to pick up on what Joy and Benjamin have said about self-expression, about the artist as teacher or being taught. So how do you teach through your art? I mean, or how were you taught about who you are as a Black man, as a Black American? I mean, you're from New York, or West Indian? Are you from South Carolina, North Carolina? I mean, I'm just trying to figure it out. So how do you bring all of that to who you are as a dancer?
Okay, so that was good. So my father's side of the family, they're from Rayford, North Carolina.
I said,
My mom's side of the family, my great-grandmother's from Virginia, and my great-grandfather's from Latvia. But I was born in Brooklyn. Yeah, we live across the street. So, family church in Brooklyn, family church in North Carolina, right? God first all the time. When I was in the second grade, I went to see the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, and I said, "Oh, you're laughing." He said, "Oh, you can make a dance about people and God and church." Went home, did a dance, right? And one of those little boys dancing around the house, afraid to say dance class. Mama, there's 80 girls. Not true, but you know, the only boy, you feel like that, right? So when I started my company, 1985, I wanted the company to be a reflection of the people. So all your teachers, your ancestors, your teachers, everybody. So I know I can do what I can do because of Mr. Avery, Catherine Dillon, right? Who did things about archaeology, right? So I'm just making contemporary dance, but dances from Senegal, from Cuba, from Haiti, done through the lens of Black people.
From Brooklyn.
Right?
Okay. All right.
Give me the question one more time.
Okay.
How do you teach?
Well, however you want to answer it. So either how were you taught about your culture and your, racial or ethnic and political identity through the arts, and then how do you use that, or how is your art reflective of who you are as a cultural and political,
Gotcha. Okay.
being?
What's really funny is your story is almost my exact same story. Like, my father's a pastor, so playing music was a no-brainer. Like, you had no choice. My little brother who's at the College of Charleston now plays drums, but doesn't really play drums, but he had to play drums. You know what I mean? I grew up in the church in Greenville, South Carolina. So playing music was immediate for me, church-wise. My mom took me to go see Alvin Ailey when I was in second grade at the Peace Center, and that was the first time. And they were doing Revelations at the time, and I've never been more enthralled about a performance in my life. The following week, Bobby McFerrin came. She took me to go see Bobby McFerrin. And I've never been more enthralled about a performance in my life. And then a couple of years later, they did Ain't Misbehaving at Greenville Little Theater, and I was like, oh wow, Black people are amazing at this, man. That's crazy. And so that was the beginning of it for me. I went to a predominantly white school for high school. I was homeschooled all my life. And then for high school, I went to a charter school, predominantly white. I came to PWI, College of Charleston, and did not actually tap into those roots again until after I graduated and started playing funk music more around town. I started playing with hip-hop artists around town, and then I also got a full-time organ job at a church, and I was like, oh, okay, it's all coming back to me now. So nowadays, the way I express isn't necessarily the way I would like to in reference to Blackness. But what I am able to do is use the knowledge that I have to go and educate children. So a lot of the things I do now is going into elementary schools and middle schools and hosting after-school programs that teach young African-American kids about creativity in the arts. So I get a chance to introduce them to Alvin Ailey, Bobby McFerrin, Langston Hughes, and a host of other Black artists.
It's interesting that you would say that, at the college. He said PWI, and for those of you who don't know, that's a predominantly white institution. Not everybody knows PWI. I had to learn.
Not a poor white institution.
Not a poor white, no, predominantly white institution. But Manny's, each of our music performance students have to do a recital. And I'm invited a lot because I deal with a lot of the students across the campus, but certainly in the School of the Arts. I forgot to say that I teach there at the college and in the theater and dance department. And Manny invited me to his senior recital, which was packed. And in many ways, sacrilegious to the Department of Music, because Manny decided that all that classical training, he still had to speak from his truth, though he was going to eat an F for that voice. He played a little bit of what he was supposed to play, and then he turned the room out. So it's interesting to me to think that you thought it was gone, because I recorded that night. It was not gone. It was just being set aside. The classical training given, demanded, and then when it counted the most, you went, yeah, that doesn't fit for me anymore. How y'all doing? You know, we heard some Fats Waller, we heard a lot of gospel music, and turned it on.
Right.
I had friends who wrote letters.
So you said something interesting, Joy, when it didn't fit any longer. What did you say? When it didn't fit with the sort of the narrow paradigm that the academy sets up for us, right?
Yeah. So
this was Manny's breakout moment. So I want to sort of, dovetail a little bit, because two of you brought up Ailey, well, and then Joy nodded in agreement that she had seen Ailey, and of course I've seen Ailey. I'm sure most of y'all have seen the Alvin Ailey dance troupe before, and the most iconic piece is Revelations. And so I'm thinking about that in terms of it being so iconic, but also for it being a testament, a timeless testament to the Black experience. In the same way that I think that this book and the stage mounting of it are timeless. And if we think about the canon of Black artistic expression, there are, of course, many pieces. I would think, we could look at any number of August Wilson's pieces, A Raisin in the Sun, A Raisin in the Sun, that are timeless pieces. But what all of them have in common, of course, they're written by genius Black artists, but they speak to us as citizens, right? And that need for our self-expression as whole humans. So if you all could kind of speak to that a little bit, like what you bring to your art, and then Joy, since you and I have kind of been talking about this book, and Benjamin, since you read it, and Manny. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. If you all could kind of talk to, the writers, she's giving voice to the Black, the Black struggle for full recognition as, for our humanity, right? For not just a space at opportunity's table, but fighting against, erasure and hyper visibility, right? And dealing with microaggressions. We talk about this a lot at the College of Charleston, how you deal with microaggressions. And I'm sure you deal with a lot of microaggressions on the streets of New York City. So if you all can speak to any of what I just said. I know I said a lot hard.
Well, Ron, you're in the you do classical ballet?
No, I do contemporary dance with traditional dance from Senegal, Cuba, Haiti. So it's all mixed like this, and then it comes out. But classical training is in there, but that's not, because of Mr. Hill and Mr. Dunham, that does not have to be at the forefront.
Right.
I don't have to show you that we can do X, Y, and Z,
Right.
because the traditional dance is where the purpose is.
Right.
So as you go over to the incredible activist poet, when I would go see her read, and she was asking the audience, are you doing the work? I was like, oh man, I'm 18 years old, I started this company, I want to start a dance company, but what is my work? Right. And so then you learn techniques, I learned ballet, you learn all this stuff, and then it comes out. Right? I could do that stuff, but I could do some other stuff.
That's interesting. I was asking the question because a lot of times within the classical realm of arts, and I've had this conversation with multiple artists around town, especially as a classical piano player coming from the College of Charleston, you get put on, at least when I first got there, you get put on these events that are hosted at houses on Broad Street, or you get put on these events where you're supposed to go and play for some donors here and there. And at the time, I'm 17 years old at the time, and I was like, oh, whatever, I don't care, I'll do it. But then you don't realize that if you decide to go outside of that, then you aren't favored anymore. You aren't favored, you aren't looked upon as someone who has talent or skill. Now you're just another talented black guy, right? Because all black people can play music, all black people can dance, all black people are funny and can act. So, a black person that can play classical piano, you're not like the rest, right? And that was the thing. That's why I was like, all right, do you do ballet? Because that's where I get the most microaggression. They only cared when I did my first junior piccolo spoleto at the age of 17. I played whatever piece I had to play at the time, come off. And I guess the piano professor at the time, I've been talking to some of the donors and patrons, and they all come up and we're supposed to stand at the door, shake everybody's hand. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming. And one lady comes out. She's like, "Now I hear your family is from Chicago. Bless your soul, baby. I am just so proud of you and everything you've accomplished." And like I had to shake her hand and say, "Oh, thank you, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate that." That's a microaggression for the simple fact that she only respected the piece I played because his family's from Chicago, so he's probably seen some hard times. So that's why I was asking about the ballet aspect, because that's the classical realm, man. It's blow your mind if you just already.
No, the dance world is like that too, but I don't. That's why I decided to start my dance company when I was 18 years old, because I didn't want to participate in just being what someone else wanted me to be. Right? But then, yeah. So you learn that stuff so that you can do all of this stuff, right?
Right.
But you don't have. I don't have to prove anything. Like I can be myself without apology.
And Joy has had to prove a lot. See, what can you talk about, Joy? Like having with being part of the college trust.
We can talk about whatever we want.
Can you talk about stuff for real? Can I ask you a question?
Go, please.
Okay, no, seriously, because there's
Joy has had to prove a lot. Go ahead.
No, because we've had conversations about you wanting to do certain shows at the college and those shows not being done or those shows not being picked.
I've had issues of casting at the college because I don't have a lot of African American students.
Right.
Generally, if I want to do it, I can do it. Right? They're not going to shut me down that way. My issues at the college have been from a completely different arena. They'll support me on the shows I want to do. They know I'm a poker. They know that I'm just going to tickle and I'm going to stab. I'm going to tickle and I'm going to stab because I know that's the way in, or that's been my way in, not recently. It's just been stab of late. But my previous way in was tickle, stab, because it's the way I learned to access what I needed to get from my audiences, whether it was my student audience, in my house you couldn't spank if you laughed, so I learned to make my parents laugh because I was always about to get spanked. So I began to use that tool outside of the house as well. And it's the kind of plays that I'm drawn to. I'm drawn to anything social justice that has a message that you're not pounding me over the head with, but that you're speaking to me in a way that I can both take in and try to shy away from, but I'm drawn. And that's what happened with Citizen, because I think it wasn't just her voice. Everything I talk about in my classroom, that what draws us to work, any work, is it is both unique and universal. If it's too unique, we can't get in. We watch from a distance, it doesn't draw us. But if it is unique and both unique and universal, it is your truth. But I get in because I felt something like that, right? Breaths that dancers take are one of the things that intrigue me the most about watching dance. I don't want them
Not
hiding.
the male bodies? Okay, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I thought it was just not talking.
The breath. I love a dancer's breath and the sound of, I think I'm drawn to modern because the noises they make, they don't hide. The sound of their feet pushing against the marley, that stuff, I want it all out. And I think that's what I love about theater, what I love about music. All kinds of music. Not all her kinds of music, but all kinds of music. I've never liked trash.
Oh, no, you
But the things that I appreciate is seeing someone pour in, so I'm allowed to take the bath too. You know what I mean? So, and you talk about that whole foundational thing. I was trained classically. You know, it was part of a big joke for a long time. I put it in my one-person show, just cast me. What? Are you bothered that I'm black? Oh, no, I was classically trained. Right. You need me to be a white woman, I've got that for you, Dad. You know? I mean, I had more trouble when I got out of school being black enough for the theater I was relegated to. Now, interestingly, while I was being trained, that was not the case because there were, 2 or 3 of us.
Right.
This was in the 70s prior to your birth. Thank you for pointing that out. But I didn't know. You know what I mean? I didn't know that that's where I was going to be a big star because I was fierce. Oh, but wait. It wasn't me you were waiting? Wait. Hold on, I played Mrs. Potts, though. Do you understand? Thornton Wilder, he loves me. I wasn't getting cast in that. I became black once I came out of university. Again. Right? The thing that drew the committee to me was my rawness. They loved the rawness. They loved it. And that's the thing they trained out of me because I wasn't going to leave them with that there. I had to leave with a certain stamp on me. That stamp did me no good once I walked into the world. Oh, it did on the phone. Joy Vandervort, yes, I'd like to make an appointment. And then I'd walk. And there's a moment in this book that cracks me up where she walks in and he goes, I didn't know you were going to be black. Oh, I didn't mean to say that. She said, oh, you didn't mean to say that out loud. And that is the stuff, that's the danger in being where we are sometimes. But I make a lot of space for myself too.
Space. Talk about hip hop space in Charleston in general, where you are.
Hip hop is in a very interesting place because hip hop is the only genre of music that is not just a genre of music, it's a culture. So hip hop music is a part of the culture of hip hop. It's bigger than just the music. Rock and roll, what is rock and roll culture? There's rock and roll, and there are other genres of music, but hip hop actually encompasses so much outside of just the musical aspect of it. It's the art, it's the poetry, it's the expression, it's the way we talk, it's the slang, it's the fashion, it's everything. And hip hop just entered a place where it's the most streamed. I think maybe for the last 2 years, I know definitely this year overtook rock and roll. It's the most streamed music in the world. Concert sales, all these things. So it's wildly popular. You turn on your TV, they use it to sell you everything. From a McDonald's hamburger, to cheeseburger, to clothing, to cars, jingles for everything. You go into a stadium and football game, basketball game, you hear hip hop playing, but for some reason, oftentimes people love the culture, but they don't love the people who create the culture as much. And as a black man, I take that with me everywhere that I go, and I approach that in my art because I understand what it's like to grow up in poor, be a poor young man. My mom, single mom at the time, when we were kids, in South Carolina, in rural South Carolina, and I had some good teachers who did. Luckily, I had some good teachers in school doing the best that they could, but what they could not give me was a sense of my self-worth as a black man. Hip-hop did that in many ways. I had mentors and I had people, of course, who loved me and family members, but to see black men being able to have the type of power to where they could say things that the world would consider radical, but it's actually factual in many regards. And to see it as raw as it is, hip-hop is one of the things to me that the music, I could have a thought in my mind, I can go in the studio, record that thought right now, my engineer can mix it down, and I can give it to the people today. There is no process that it has to go through. There is not necessarily a band that I have to put together to make it happen. So me being a student of music and a student of the culture, I like to dig into the stories from Sister Rosetta Tharpe to Beyonce, from Motown, pre-Motown, the Chitlin Circuit, and dive into those artists and what they had to do, because I understand what happens to black culture in America. I was reading Mavis Staples' autobiography one day, and she was talking about being in a Chitlin Circuit on Sundays, how they would do gospel. It was like, you think that was the show all week, like everybody was waiting for Sunday. And she talked about her and singing her father in their group, and I think David Ruffin, who ended up being the lead singer of the Temptations, he was like 16 years old. They were all singing gospel, and he had just gotten off stage, and there was a guy in the back of the room standing there in leather jacket, motorcycle helmet in his hand. Right guy, nobody knew who he was. And after she came off, she said, David Ruffin tapped her and said, "Do you know who that is?" And she was like, "No." He's like, "That's the guy who sang Blue Suede Shoes," just hanging out in the backwoods of, wherever they were at the time, Mississippi or Alabama, doing a gospel show, because he's just hanging out, checking out. That's black culture, that's from the church. And my job, I believe, what I'm trying to bring to the table is to take all that information and to use it to put out music, thoughtfully written, musically depth and robust, and let these young children, young men, young black men, and young black women know their value. I don't want to mask what's going on in the world right now, because it's not anything new. It's been going on. It will continue to go on. I just want them to feel what I was lucky enough to feel, a sense of self-worth, that I can empower myself to speak against all of this stuff and not be afraid to be as black as whatever that definition is for me, as black as I want to be.
May I ask another question? Is everybody falling in love with me? Because I'm just saying. Is the room okay? Go ahead.
It's probably appropriate, Joy, because you're married. Keep that in mind. But I want to pick up on a point that you made with that anecdote from Mavis Staples, where Elvis Presley presumably was at this juke joint, which brings up this whole point of cultural appropriation, right? And so, that is a big, that is the white elephant, that is sucking up all the air right now, right? Because how do we deal with cultural appropriation today? Because on the one hand, someone would say that, imitation is the highest form of flattery, but at the same time, when Becky is appropriating Beyonce's work and then, monetizing it on a higher, degree. Of course, Beyonce ain't missing no dollars, but the point is, how do we, just as Elvis Presley made a crap load more money than the black progenitors of the music of that day did, we're seeing white artists do the same. How do we deal with that? Or has that train left the station? Do we just kind of, because I saw on YouTube, man, there were these white African dancers. They were white American doing African dance, and it was like, no, Becky, don't do it, don't do it. But Becky was out there doing saba and all that. It was crazy.
Yeah, and they will do it. It's just, okay. So my company was in Budapest many years ago, and I was interviewed by a Hungarian woman who had an African dance company. She had braids, and I was like, oh, okay. But when we evidenced it our show, they're like, oh, we didn't know what was going on because the curtains were closed. Right? So she's like, no, that's fine. We're going to let her know who we're about. You can do that, and it is what it is. Hungarians do African dance the way they do it, that's fine. But we have to do what we do. Right? We have a season in Brooklyn, and we're doing it in a new theater, downtown in Fort Greene across from this. And it's supposed to be in the community, and it is, but the audience is not like when we performed a couple weeks ago on the campus where we had our office. The audience was different, the energy was different. It's like, it's good. Right? But we still have to do the work in all the places, and if we get the chance to do the places where it feels different, great, you do it. But we can't worry about that other situation. Because they will always do that. But I just say never trust the people. Of people. People steal people and steal culture. Not trustworthy. So.
The one thing that like comes to mind for me, I've been talking about cultural appropriation in general because it's not something I think about often anymore. The thing that makes me most uncomfortable is when I'm being viewed as a black person who can perform. And it's like, oh, this person can perform because he's black. Get him on there, he can perform, right? I would
Or
much
speak well, be articulate.
or speak well, or whatever that may be. But let's back up. What's the quote from the book we were talking about earlier? I feel most black
When put against a sharp, why?
Ronald K quote.
Right. So that's one of the quotes from the Citizen, and or that they put in Citizen. And you think about a place like, is this being filmed for like, is this going on like whatever? Forget it. You think about places like Hall's Chop House, right? And I've played there multiple times. Did a stint there for a while. But then you think about the fact that on Sundays they do the gospel brunch thing, and it's really kind of uncomfortable. That's just the best word for it. It's really kind of uncomfortable because it's like, oh, let's get some black people who know how to sing gospel. Get them in here. Authentically. We're gonna get some black people that can sing gospel. Get them in here, and then the prices are so high, the black people can't come in there anyways. Well, we just gonna let all of these, and they're gonna watch them sing gospel. I would feel more comfortable with a white person singing gospel at that moment. You know, go ahead, appropriate it, please. You go appropriate it at this moment, because I really don't want my brothers and sisters in there singing gospel when on a Friday night when I go in there to play, and then I put out on Facebook, hey, I'm playing at Hall's Chop House, come have a drink. And three of my good girlfriends walk in, and no one says hello to them. Nobody asks if they want to sit down. Nobody at all. Nobody paid attention to them. And if you've ever been to Hall's Chop House, the moment you walk through that door, hey, how you doing? What's that? Thank you so much. My name is such and such Hall, and whoever's there at the door at that day, right? Nobody said a word to them. And I'm over there just playing my butt off. And I'm just like, wow, because I know on Sunday, there's going to be another black person here. They're going to be profiting off the fact that black people can sing gospel music authentically. And another black person may walk in here that may not fit the look of that restaurant. And nobody's going to service them the way they should be serviced. So when I think about cultural appropriation, if they're going to appropriate it, please go appropriate it for your people. You know what I mean? So that way you're not looking at me as only an entertainment value. You know?
I don't know how to stop cultural appropriation because it happens all the time. It's happening right now somewhere. But that's why I take a certain approach to my work, and I'm going to be black in my work, and I'm not going. I don't like that word diversity. That's one word that I've grown not to like because sometimes it can be co-opted and it's not an honest word. Sometimes when it's used, don't just make something diverse so you can appropriate and say, well, we had some women there. We had Mexican people there. We had a couple black people there. There were a couple black people. It's the reason why there's R&B, urban AC radio. And it's the reason why black R&B artists are routinely told that song is too slow. We need something faster that we can play so it can hit top 40, so that it can hit pop radio. But Sam Smith, a white, blue-eyed soul singer, can come out with a hit record with a choir in the background. That is a ballad. It's the reason why Adele can put out ballads and get top 40 play. But Jasmine Sullivan isn't on top 40 radio. It is something unique. I mean, Elvis, the king of rock and roll, Elvis ain't the king to me. Elvis took something, took 10%, and I'm not saying Elvis didn't have talent. He did. Elvis took 10% of what black people were doing incredibly and packaged it in a way that white people of the time can consume it. And all of this is indicative of an even larger issue.
85%.
85%, yes. It's indicative of a larger issue of the way white people in mass view black people. We see it come in the form of the approach and the reception of the arts. Because Eminem, I'm a hip hop artist. I think from a technical standpoint, from lyrics and rhymes and cadence and flow, Eminem is one of the greatest hip hop artists that I've ever heard. But I also understand that the freedom that this white man has, I will never have. I would never be able to get on a record and talk about, no matter if I was in a home where I was abused, if I was in any kind of situation that was just as if being black in America is a perpetual trauma. I would never be able to be on a record talking about how I would want to beat this woman up or kill my mother or readily do drugs all the time, like talking about it repeatedly selling, being the all-time leader for records sold and hip-hop. That is a space that white men can exist in, that black men don't have the free, because we are automatically looked at. As she talked about, Trayvon Martin, you automatically, like a 17-year-old guy, you look, white America sees him as a threat because he's tall. So I don't know how to stop cultural appropriation. It's just going to happen because it's indicative of systemic racism and how white people see black people and how we are allowed or whether we have access to these spaces. If KFC sell chicken and churches sell chicken and KFC is doing something that's really dope and churches start doing something that's really dope to mimic KFC and they both have equal access to advertising, a base of clientele and all of those things, if everything's even, ain't no appropriation. That's the free market work, right? But if KFC is doing something dope, but they're not allowed to purchase an actual establishment to sell their product, they're ostracized with regulations and business and good old boy systems and things like that. But churches takes exactly what KFC is doing because they have all the access to do all that. I got a problem with that. I'm gonna call it out every time. I don't know how to stop it, but we have a responsibility to call it out as often as we see it.
Well, I think that's what we call speaking truth to power, which is not an easy thing to do, especially in a place like Charleston, where we are lulled into believing this idea that, what we call the Charleston myth, that everyone is kind and nice, and and we are beguiled by these throwbacks or carryovers of antebellum sensibilities, which of course, as we know, antebellum times weren't good for our people. They were only good for the plantation class. But I want to bring up, you brought up Trayvon Martin and his height, which brings to bear the place of the black body in American society, right? And so the piece in here where she deals with Serena Williams' body, and of course we've had to deal with, I'm gonna say the problem of Serena Williams' body for the longest, right? Like she's a brick house, she's too big, she's manly, she's too powerful, she's a gorilla, she's this, she's that. I mean, just insanity. It harkens back to the way that Sarah Bartman was treated, who went on to be unfortunately known as the Venus Hottentot, right? How black women have been objectified since our ancestors were absconded from in Africa and brought over to the quote-unquote New World, right? So black women and black men, of course, we know have been hypersexualized. We see this in Griffith's A Birth of a Nation, The Birth of a Nation. We see all those tropes of the black brute, the savage, the promiscuous black man in The Birth of a Nation, but we see it trickle down throughout the years in, American cinema and television. So we go from the black brute to the, oh my gosh, the Stephen Fetchit character, who is the Stephen Fetchit, the Sambo, and the coon, and then of course the black woman is either the mammy or the promiscuous Jezebel. So this whole
Sapphire.
or the sapphire, that's sapphire. So the problem of the black body just lingers. It is the problem because, like you said, you could be Joy Vandervort on the phone, and then when you walk through the door, you couldn't possibly be Joy Vandervort because, Joy Vandervort is Dutch, right? And clearly you ain't Dutch. Not Dutch, right? So how do we... The Dutch girl. So this idea of the menacing black body or the hypersexualized black body, and I'm just curious how you deal with that as a dancer, because y'all usually up there with your skimpies on, dancing and out there, or maybe not in your skimpies, so maybe I'm just objectifying dancers. So
Yeah, I think the issue is to be a full range of your person, right? So I'm Ronald Kevin Brown. My father is Ronald, so my family calls me Kevin. In the dance company, I'm Ron or Uncle. And then sometimes they said, Kevin. Kevin just showed up. So he's a different person, but I have 3 nieces, 3 nephews. So there's many sides of me, and he shows up. So I'm not only one family, right? Sometimes I come into the city, I need to know you having a meeting. You have all my adult clothes. Right? Or I have a board meeting. Right? But I had a board member at an event, and I think I was in rehearsals, I had on basketball shorts and maybe a t-shirt. And I forget what she says, you look like a b-boy. Wow. A black woman.
Wow.
Yeah, on my board. I was like, wow.
Well, we get it from our own.
Yeah, so I think that this wants to be the full range, right? So I have many sides, and you can meet them if you invite that person.
Exactly. And that's the truth for all of us, isn't it? In many ways that we are not one. We are one with many facets of that one. You flip me to the right side and you get who you get. I'm going to come at you and you can give me the side eye if you want to. I'm going to come at you in the best possible way. But if you can't hear me in that tone, I can bring another person out too. I'm going to match my voice to the pitch that you hear the best. Right? Joy, the one who will play along, and then the one who won't, And I think as an artist, I have those sides as well. I have, unlike so many artists, and particularly in this town, I'm thinking actor, director, writer, more than, my husband's a musician, and he gigs, because jazz plays here. Oddly, but it plays here. And I think some of that is, you call it the Charleston myth, I call it the Charleston lie. Some of it is due to that thing. Entertainment has always been the safe place. When we were discounted from access to anything, we still were able to get through on entertaining, through our art, through our words. Langston Hughes was syndicated, right? We had artists throughout time. Harlem Renaissance. Our words were passionate. We could sing and dance for you, but you didn't want us living next door to you, right? You wouldn't let us join the union. How in 1959, Raisin in the Sun could hit Broadway, win all the awards, and none of those African Americans were invited into the union, including Lloyd Wright, a director on Broadway of an award-winning show, but you can't get into the union. In 1959, I know that was a long time ago for you people. 1959, you're not invited in. It wasn't until the 90s that we had a black director directing on television. You guys, it's not that long ago. Or an African-American director directing a non-ethnic piece.
Right.
George C. Wolfe.
Yes.
Doing Angels in America in the 90s. I mean, sweet cheese and crackers. We have not come. We've come very far. Here I am, sitting up in here, right? But not really that far along. Not really that far along. And the idea of patience. And to tell, I mean, truth be told, really, I mean, come on. She wrote this, and the reason it resounds is both for its information and its unique but universal tone.
Yes.
When we were blessed and honored to do this, the play that was adapted by Stephen Sachs, a white cat out in Los Angeles, and brought to us with the original director, Shirley Jo Finney, my dog, from LA, and talking through the process and all that about this piece. What was interesting and such an amazing thing that happened for us at Pure, and I'm not just saying it because our artistic director, my boss, is sitting out there, Shannon Gracie, but because we had, facilitators every night to have talkbacks. And so many of our audience members said, I didn't realize when I said that, when I did that, it meant to you that I didn't mean to hurt you. Right, it's not intentional. So when I make the correction to say, ooh, that was stinging, and you go, I didn't mean to hurt you, I know you didn't, but now I need you to hear that you did, and that words count. I understand you weren't trying to make me feel less than, but you did. This is how you did it. Can you hear me? Oh, you can't hear me? Now you're gonna get my angry self, okay? If you can just hear me say, I'm not accusing you of being a racist. I'm accusing you of some implicit bias that makes you speak to me, that makes you relate to me, and people who look like me, particularly people you don't know. Because with me, you feel safe. With me, you feel loved. With me, you feel like, I love her. But with my son, if he's not with me and you're not sure it's him, you cross the street. And I have to tell you how diminishing that is to my son, who's this beautiful, gentle poet warrior, who's a foodie, whom we call the mayor because he's so doggone friendly. You know, very loving, this cat. But you cross the street because he's also big. Because you bought into the story that big and black is dangerous. Not knowing that big and black can be a teddy bear. And now white people scare the shiznissel out of me. You've made it uncomfortable for me to be here. For me to not look over my shoulder. For me to not know if I'm safe. Because certain privileges have been taken, certain assertions have been made that make me say, be careful, girl, you don't really know who that is. It took us 2 weeks to find out that Trump did not win the popular vote. For 2 weeks, I looked at all my colleagues. I said, I know one of you assholes voted. And I meant it just like that. Somebody in this space is lying to me. Somebody voted for this. That's right. And then I found out 2 weeks later that there was, he'd lost the popular vote and had to go give people hugs.
I want to
add to that.
I said, I'm sure it wasn't you.
I do want to add to that. I read a piece, and this is the last thing I'm going to add to that.
Yes, because then we're going to go to Q&A.
Oh, sorry.
A piece in the Atlantic called Our First White President.
I have some.
And it is interesting, a narrative that you will not hear on the news, and this is what we have to begin to grapple with. Yes, Trump lost the popular vote by about 3 million votes. Okay. If you take away, if you only look at white people who voted for Donald Trump, only look at white people. The narrative that Trump won because of uneducated, poor white people is a lie.
Yeah.
Trump won every white Democrat. He won people who make $0 to $20,000, $20,000 to $40,000, $40,000 to $50,000, $50,000 to $100,000, $100,000 to $250,000 and above. He won every white category there financially. He won white people with college degrees, white people without college degrees. He won white men, he won white women. He won every, so from, and all of this can be found in that article. If you took exit polling from only white people who voted for Trump, he would have won the electoral college 380 something to 80 something. So, the I have black friends, when she talks about things like implicit bias, we get beautiful pieces like that that illustrate the black experience in America in the same way that it's not on women to end sexism, because women are largely the victims of behavior that's perpetuated by men. It's on us to understand and be mindful so that we can make the change. It's not on black people to cure racism.
Exactly.
It's on white people. And that doesn't always mean saying that I disassociated myself from that other white person because they said something. No, that's your white uncle or your white brother. You need to check them and explain to them why they're wrong. That's how you're going to end it. It's 198 million white people in this country. It's 45 roughly million black people. 1619, the Dutch brought the first enslaved African to Virginia. It's almost 400 years. If love only and holding hands, walking across the bridge in Jesus was going to end racism, we would have done it by now. Because look at what America has been able to do in 400 years. Look at technology, look at infrastructure, look at all these things. This is on white people to do their part.
Right. Well, on that note from the youngin, we're going to turn it over to the audience.
To the oldest? To the oldest? NWA, I just want to say 3 things. NWA, all right, never liked their name, but always heard their voice. And the fact that they were able to say what they did is what brought the fear. There was I love PE, and one of their biggest things, other than don't believe the hype, is fear of a black planet.
Right.
It's the idea that there is an ignorance that exists where people don't know people.
Right.
And when you don't know, you fear. And then that fear turns into hate, which turns into actions against, because I've got to show I'm better than, okay? That is the problem with Serena. It's, how can this woman be like that? See, I was born in the 40s, so I remember Althea Gibson and what was said about her. It is the same tune, over and over and over, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. Sometimes dope, sometimes whatever. It's the same thing, and that is our problem. People who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it. It is education, 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 and you hit it. You have to keep, not just what, all of us need to be educated all the time. I see things that I don't know what that is, and it's like, I gotta look that up. I gotta ask someone, what does that mean? You know, I'm not gonna assume, because you know what happens when you assume? You make an ass out of you, not me. So it's that. Nina Simone is the epitome of how you take your own voice and you play fugues through songs that never had a fugue in it because you were classically trained and you know how to do that. If you have not seen Ronald K. Brown's Evidence, you will see the classicism of form, because in dance and in all arts there's form. And as artists you have to know the form, because that's what helps you create. That gets, you have stuff going on in here and here, but the form helps you propel it out so that others can embrace it. So when you see that dance company, you see the classical training, you see the unbelievable discipline that goes into being able to get those bodies doing what they're doing. But it is produced within a realm of expression that speaks to me and speaks in a way that doesn't mean that I have to go do the, no, there's no finger popping and foot stomping. We think it becomes so narrow. And what I'm hearing is it's not narrow, it's broad. So we embrace it. It's like, who cares? All the time, you sound white. I speak English. Yes. We used to tell our kids from Chicago, what's his name, but did all the black boys things. But kids would say to him, they tell me that you sound white, or if you're smart, you sound white because you're speaking correct English. So then, if sounding white is speaking good English and being intelligent, then what is black? We have to embrace all of this. Whoever you are, all those roles you just talked about, we are multifaceted, and it's like, it's appropriation. Johnny Mathis never sang the gospel ever, but my God, Nancy Wilson, we have this, and we need to embrace it all and not run away from it. So be as whatever you want to be your authentic self, and let that speak for you. And I'm sorry, but it's like, what you think of me is none of my business.
Right.
And I embrace me. If you cannot accept me, I'm going to make myself as palatable, but I'm not begging for you to like it.
Exactly.
Presentation, this is it. This is what you get. Take it or leave it, but this is what you're going to get. So,
All right. Thank you. Was there another comment or question? I think you asked it for everybody, KCC. Oh, wait. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm interested to know if anyone has read the recent Rolling Stone article on the madness of Donald Trump. In that article, the writer says there's good reason that America deserves this crazy man, because we won't acknowledge the killing that this country is based upon, the enslavement this country is based upon. There's all kinds of exceptionalism that we practice in international relations. It's a really fine article that I would recommend to the.
It's in Rolling Stone?
It's in this month's Rolling Stone magazine.
Okay. Well, I would agree. We do have what we deserve. In many ways, I feel like we're experiencing a new nadir in race relations in this country, unseen since Reconstruction. And I think that, it just speaks to what a lot of, white people have felt, are feeling. It was unpopular to say the things that a lot of Donald Trump's base is saying and supports and believes for many years until we got Obama, right? And then 8 years of Obama, within the first couple of years of Obama, it was cool to call the president a liar. It was cool to make caricatures of the president and the first lady as, primates, and just to say that one guy said he wanted the president's children to be barren. I mean, it just brought out all of the hate that was resonating, and I think that hate has been festering since poor whites bought into the lie of white supremacy during Reconstruction, right? Because during Reconstruction, there was a time where black folks and white folks, poor white folks, could have turned the tide and really come together, and we would have a different landscape right now. But for white supremacy and this idea that, oh yeah, you might be a poor sharecropper, but you're better than a nigger that, who was formerly, enslaved. So I feel like a lot of what we're seeing is just generational, this brewing of generational frustration on the parts of poor and working class white men, right? Because they feel like they have lost something, that black folks are taking what's rightfully theirs, which is interesting, that myth, because I think one economist has said that it would actually take 400 years for black families to reach the same wealth of their white counterparts. So if it'll take us 400 years, how the hell are black people taking white people's places at the opportunities table? You know what I'm saying? But that is sort of the myth that underlies, you know, this angst, right? That black folks got something that white folks don't have. And who is it? Was it Chris Rock that said, ain't a white man today that would change places with a black person? So get out of here, right? So anyway, I'm digressing now.
Can I ask one question? In the text, Joy, you seem to be really familiar. Do you feel that there are whole pages that could be just about the female experience as well? Just about the disenfranchisement? I mean, that's what I'd be curious about, the universality of this piece. Aren't there just pages, because I read them, and I kind of flipped up to the front and I said, that could be just written about being a woman.
I think it is. I mean, it's spoken from her most female place. Because if we look at it, it's her voice that we're hearing. Now, yeah, it's she and her girlfriends talking that she has mined through, but it's her voice, right? In the play, you see and hear much more from a male perspective. I was sharing that with Dr. Lessane earlier this week, because I said it's so funny because I didn't even recognize that in the play, so much of this was given, so much of the animus was given to the woman, right, as opposed to the men from when she got it. It wasn't a woman who said that to her, it was a man. This wasn't an encounter with a man, with a woman, this was an encounter with another man. But I guess when Sachs was adapting it, Stephen Sachs opted to take some of the heat off of the men. But in so doing, change some of the dynamic that exists in Citizen as she wrote it. For me, this is very much from a feeling woman's place, and that disenfranchisement of woman who is intellectual, woman who is strong, woman who is accomplished, woman who is standing and can stand and has stood on her own. But you keep moving that chair and asking me to sit down. And then you move that chair and you ask me to sit down. And a woman who is depressed. Because part of it too, I think one of the things that made me, it took me 3 days to bathe, 3 days to get out of the bed after the Mother Emanuel massacre. 3 days of people crying and trying to get me to sit back up because there was something that was crackling. And it was this book that made me sit up and then finally swing my feet out. And in swinging that feet, I was like, wow, you are funky. So I bathed. And she lifted me so many times because I said, that's my story. You know, that moment where she's driving with the man and she goes, is he testing me? Did you just say to a woman who is a writer, who is teaching at the same place that you are, I can't believe it, my dean is making us hire some black guy when there's all these talented writers out there? And I'm a writer? Are you really saying that? I'm telling you, yeah, it's written from a woman's voice. It's Claudia's voice. And it's her interactions, the idea of going to the therapist's office, and because you don't recognize my voice as that of an African American, when you answer the door, you scream, what are you doing? Why are you standing on my property? Go. It's like, I have an appointment. You have an appointment? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm not coming. What? Me too. But also her inability. There is a generation of us, I believe, a generation, I'm not your generation, Joy. There's a generation of us who were taught to be polite no matter what, right? Those of us who are the first beneficiaries of the actions of our parents and our grandparents, the civil rights movement. This is where you got to do well.
Right.
Sit up, you got to do better. Blah, blah, blah. So sometimes we trapped our own voices, and that is when she looks at Serena and says, have you gone? She's gone crazy. A part of her is celebrating that craziness because her voice is so trapped. I think that's why the painting meant so. I can see the trap, but I can see the freedom and the reach for the freedom and the dripping and the power of the spirit going up. KTC has a piece over there that you have to see on this side of the wall. And I was telling her how much it moved me, but my purse wasn't big enough to stick it in, so it's still on the wall. But she talks about seeing Serena and being completely flipped out by how Serena is responding in anger and out of character. And it's just this pile of things that are coming at Serena, coming at Serena, coming at Serena. And I think she's really celebrating that Serena has finally said enough.
Right.
No, 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 no. Because there's a generation of us who have not been allowed to do that. Or we're told that you can't do that. We do not fight this hard for you to make this much noise when you get in the room. Your responsibility is to get in the room and open the door and open a window and let some other people in. Especially for what?
Lost no people. 9 people who died and 6 of them Black women.
So some of that is a taught response. I think generally for women, the nurturers, blah, 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 right? Some of it is a learned response, certainly in the African American community, about what women are supposed to do, and that comes from slavery on to today. And there are different moments in our history where the family was purposely rended. And we found ways to connect, like Ron is suddenly Uncle Ron to me, or Uncle Kevin, and this boy becomes a son, and that child's been a son, and that's a sister, and that's a sister, and there's my cousin. You build your family as you go, because that's what you need to survive. But some of it, we've been taught to swallow that voice before somebody recognizes that you are here.
Well, Joy, then what do you do as a young artist then who wants to respect their elders, but is still being taught by their elders? Because I've been told by very, very well-respected musicians in this town, Black musicians in this town, that I'm too loud. I've been told that before. Well, while I was still in college. And then a very famous touring musician came through town, and she even told me, because I said something along the lines, I was asking her about, what's it called, being around musicians who are just very vulgar, talking about women, things like that. And the way she responded back just didn't seem like she wanted to care, because I wanted to make a fuss about it. And when I told her I wanted to make a fuss about it, she was like, boy, sit down, we ain't got time to worry about that, make money. What do you do in those situations as a young artist when you want to respect your elders, but they're still telling you, shut up?
Well, it depends. Do you want to work with this person in the future?
These are very well-respected people.
Well, maybe shut up. Just in that setting, but not just maybe in that instant. You know what I mean? Unless it's just too outrageous. You know what I mean? If her point was, if you were debating with her about something, it didn't sound like you were debating with her about something. It sounded like you were talking to her about wanting to engage in a debate or dialogue about something that bothers you with other people. So in your mind, you decide if that is who you're going to be and champion that cause. Does it make a difference that you have to tell her that this is what I'm going to do anyway? I mean, I don't think you need to kowtow, but the real fight is with the issue. She wasn't vulgar. She wasn't disrespectful. She wasn't a progenitor of that. the people you really need to address were elsewhere, right? So I think in that, but if you see it, call it out, but it doesn't sound like you needed to call it out with her unless I'm getting it wrong. I don't know.
It also, I agree with you 100%. It's possible that people become indoctrinated to a way of doing things, especially when that way of doing things have provided them some benefits, especially financial benefits. So the world is moved by ideas. Every time you have an opportunity to get on stage, every time you have an opportunity to get in front of mic, and if you use that opportunity and that platform to express with conviction how much you value women, you use that platform to afford women the platform that they may have been disenfranchised from having. That's an opportunity to normalize, make something a new normal. So yeah, that might not be your fight to have that argument with her because she may be indoctrinated, whatever. But every time you get an opportunity to get in front of a microphone, to get in front of people, you're normalizing a new idea or a new way of thinking, whether it's about women. And as men, the privilege that we have, that's what we should be doing anyway. And art gives us a big platform.
And on the other side, she may have not been bothered by the vulgar language that day. Another day she might have said, yeah, you know what, I'm sick of these cats. And y'all both could have laid them out, right? Or she said, but I can handle mine. Or she might have thought you were trying to rescue her, which she didn't need. Now with the other musicians who I'm assuming are male here in town that are up there and are telling you, well, you're too loud, you're too loud, you're too loud. You know what? I've been told I was loud.
Not you, girl.
I know it's surprising. By everybody, mama, daddy, all of them. But it didn't change who I am because if I have something to say, I may have to be loud. Because if you're concerned about the strength of my voice, if you're concerned about the issue I'm speaking about that means something to me, that's not really my concern. My concern is getting that out there and making sure that somebody's hearing it and maybe responding to it. Now, there are times where it's not appropriate, where I've had my shout-outs, okay? And I've been called to task on that. And depending upon how I'm feeling, I can take it and go, oh, well, my bad. But they heard it, didn't they? Right? Or you might want to step back because I'm about to do it again. Right? So, I mean, it depends. It depends on how badly do I want to battle this. Right? But I'm not one you're going to tell me that I'm going to quiet my truth to make you feel better. I'm just not the one you're going to do that with. But it didn't take me a long time. I mean, I left home at 16, right? And kept on hustling it. If I thought that I could have gone back and they would have paid my bills, I would have. But, I mean, I went to school early. I didn't, run away, right? So, but I went really far away. I left New York and went to LA, right? And so I spent a chunk away from home. It changed who I was. So each time we change, though, Emmanuel, everybody around us has to change. Nobody wants to do that. I see it in my experience with colleagues, and my experience with students, my experience with friends and family members. If it's your truth, nobody can quiet that down. But you can't. The deal is, every time I punch a brick wall, I get bloody nose. Sometimes I have to feel the wall to find out where the brick is to push in. It's not about punching every wall, right? And you don't know where that sister was when you started to talk to her. She could have been. There are days where I would go, I don't care about that. There are other days I say, yeah, will you take these motherfuckers down, please? And there are other days where I'm gonna handle it right now. Y'all bothering this boy.
On that note, I just want to say thank you. Sometimes it's very easy to let those who have far more important things to say pull forth. Arnold is upstairs and ready to offer anybody a glass of wine or a beer or a cool drink if you care to continue the conversation. But before we do that, I did say that we have an introduction at the end to talk about our next big read projects. I'd like Jerome Meadows to come forward and quickly give a rundown of what's happening these next few days out in West Ashley, culminating in a premiere on the 14th of October at Cure. And then at the close, I'd like each of the panelists to say what's up next for them. I know some of them have great things happening here in Charleston. One is going back for some great exciting news in New York. We can talk about that, Ron. But what a panel. You know, obviously the words not only leap off the page, but it just sparks conversations that I wish we could have more frequently. And with that said, this space is here. This space is the city's gallery. So consider it an open invitation. We are happy to continue this dialogue. I looked at this panel and see not only Moja colleagues and friends, but Spoleto and Piccolo Spoleto alums. We don't have to have these conversations just in February and October. We can do this again and again and again until we feel we've talked it out. And I don't mean across a race line, I mean until we get it out so that we know where we are. And with that in mind too, do know that the city is looking at its cultural policies. This is very important for the mayor, and we're hopeful that we can use this space, safe spaces like these, to come together and put out some ideas, put out aspirations, talk about your experiences to date. So I hope everybody will walk away from tonight, not just with better insight to what we're all encountering here in Charleston, but knowing that we're trying to find paths forward. And hopefully that's going to result in not only bigger and better things, but I'm so appreciative to the honesty and the candor, and to our expert facilitation here. I'm going to ask for a better moderator, keeping people that know exactly what we need to hear and keep the conversation moving. But again, I'd like to have Jerome quickly give a rundown on Blank Page Poetry, which is a very exciting project for the NEA Big Read and Free Verse Poetry Festival.
Yes. I'll be brief. I know we've been sitting for a while. My name is Jerome Meadows. I'm living in Savannah, Georgia currently, but I'm from New York City as well. So shout out to Harlem and Sugar Hill. I'm primarily a visual artist, but I do poetry. I love poetry, and I came up with this performance event I call Blank Page Poetry, Words and Shadows. And as the title suggests, there's a large sheet of white paper, seamless white paper, about 10 feet wide, suspended from about 9 feet. And the poet, instead of being there for you to peruse their attire and who they are and what they look like, that poet is behind the sheet of paper, and what you're getting is the shadow of the individual. People have alluded that this seems to be the spirit of the poet. As they're reciting their poem, they're performing the poem, and simultaneously phrases from the poem are projected onto that sheet of white paper. So you're reading, you've got this mysterious shadow images, which can sometimes turn into 4 people. The closer you are to the paper, the more human scale, and the closer you are to the light, you become larger than life. So it's a very simple process, but I think it's very potent, and I hope you will come and check it out. The performance is at Pure Theater, October 14th, 2 shows, one at 6, one at 8. The other thing about Blank Page Poetry is it's very site-specific. The performers are all from Charleston area. We're going to have at least 8 or 9 poets, including Marcus Amaker, your poet laureate. There's a dance performance as well, or dance component. And the theme is also derived from the local community. And after conversing with people for about 3 months, actually, gentrification was sort of identified as the theme. I wonder why. But I look at gentrification not simply in terms of the here and now, but if you think about it, Columbus was the first gentrifier. Okay, so the poetry will sort of cover a wide gamut of what gentrification not only is, but what it does to different communities. And yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm here from now until then, rehearsing with the poets, because again, you're giving up that position of standing there reading or reciting your poem, and it's your shadow that is now communicating with the audience. So we have one-on-one rehearsals to get the poets to embrace their shadow. And that will be happening at the schoolhouse all this week. And then 2 dress rehearsals at Pier. We move into Pier Theater on the 10th, I believe. Dress rehearsals, and then bam, walk in at 6, walk in at 8, walk out, transform. You're
welcome. Next up, October 4th, that's Wednesday, we're doing a Sly and the Family Stone tribute show at the Poorhouse. And it's full band, Charles Singleton is playing trumpet, Michael Quinn, saxophone, I'm singing, doing keys, Sandrina Dunning from the Sandrina Dunning Experience is singing, Aisha Frazier is singing, who else? Corey Stevens on bass, Dave Grimm on guitar, Stuart White on drums, and then we have some guest rappers sitting in, She Stags, and Femio, I forget how to say Femi's last name, but yeah, that'll be fun. It starts at October 4th, this Wednesday.
Wednesday, October 4th, that's this week at the Poorhouse. If you want to see Quentin Baxter and Marcus Anderson of the Poetic Jazz Society at the Dock Street at 7:30, you can make it to the Poorhouse, because Charlton says he's doing just that, way more than both places, and knock out some tunes.
It's going to be cool. You can get tickets online, Charleston Poorhouse.
October 14th as a part of the Free Verse 50 as part of Free Verse Festival, Poetry Festival. We have an event called Rainbow Road, a civic engagement, and it's merging art and civic engagement together to present programming for the audiences from 7 to 9. Tickets are $11. KJ Kearney, myself, and Elliot Smith, me and Elliot Smith are in a band together called Very Hypnotic Soul Band, but we're producing the event. And it's basically challenging brand Charleston. So it'll be a mix of spoken word artists, poets, and people who've done extensive work in several areas, from professors, universities, executive director, ACLU, et cetera, and we will put on a civic engagement. So hope to see you guys.
I'll be at Pure Theater starting on October 26th with, that's our preview night, with an opening on the 27th with the Royale, which is this beautifully crafted piece of magic by Marco Ramirez. And that's all I'm going to say. It's just, it's magic. It's magic. And we run for 4 weeks at Pure. You can check us out at puretheater.org.
So while Evidence is here, tomorrow we're teaching at both Charleston School of Arts, New York. There's 2 classes. Then we're going to go down to Gadsden Wharf, and I'll teach opening class where basically we're going to learn spiritual dances to playing that place down there. So from South Carolina to Cote d'Ivoire, Somali stuff, South Cuba. And then the company will do a little excerpt from this piece called Highlight, which will open with Oscar Brown Jr. to Pyramid. Nikki Giovanni, a poem for Women of Leisure. And then participants will then do the spiritual dances on the place. On Wednesday, I think we're teaching at the university, college, and we'll do a lecture demonstration of this piece called Walking on the Dark, that I believe was a book of poetry that is a book of poetry and essays, but I realized it was a dance. I'm like, goodness, why? So it's a dance now. Music of Philip Hamilton and a company from Santiago in Cuba that we met in 2001. Looking at my associate artistic director, Arcel Kellogg. So if I forget anything, you can tell me. Then I go back on Thursday. The company will do some teaching on Thursday. I'm going back to meet with the state that's came and approached Susie Lori Parks. We work with the Gershwin program Best. She's developing how they come into a musical for the public theater. So I'll go to see the reading for that because we'll work on that and we'll see. Yes. And then the company will go into rehearsal for performances in North Carolina and South Carolina. We'll be there most of November. Yes,
That's gonna be fun, and also, that's exactly.
and I'm teaching a
You hear how
class.
he's name dropping Susan Lori Park? Like, okay.
No, but sorry, the last thing on, so after that meeting is rehearsal, I'm going to teach a class in the lobby of New York City Center because of Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, right? The little boy made a piece. So at this point, I've had 6 pieces on the company.
Oh, word.
And they're doing a piece called Open Door for this festival called Fall for Dance. And I'll teach this class in the lobby of the material before they do it.
And so the one important detail that for Ron for tomorrow, evidence, 5 o'clock at Gadsden Wharf, performance around 6, free to the public. Come on out. Weather forecast looks good. Spread the word. The more people that are there, the more we'll get to enjoy and walk away transformed, to use Jerome's words.
Where's that?
Gadsden Wharf, the future site of the African American Museum, right next to the Charleston Maritime Center. Gravel lot with parking, meters that run out at 6, so there should be no excuse about it's inconvenient. It's downtown. Come over, join us. And then I'll also mention the Bucks and Books, our partners are here with copies of Citizen if anybody wanted to pick up a copy tonight. But as I said, please join us. We know it's a little bit late for a school night, but we know there's a lot to talk about still, and we're happy to have you here.
Can I plug 2 Avery events? October 10th, we're showing an outrage about lynchings here in South Carolina. It's at 6 o'clock on the 10th, I believe. And then on October 25th, we will be releasing our findings from the Charleston County Racial Disparities Report.
Whoa.
So that will be major. So
Well, that's October 25th, you said?
October 25th. We might not be invited to too many things. But come on.
On Friday, somewhere, the BBC Global is here and recording, taping for their show. I'm emceeing until they start filming. And the thing is, America, yeah, America Divided, Trump in the White House or something like that.
All right.